So 2 words suddenly showed up in media headlines and across social media feeds last month, and those 2 words were Nipah virus. They were being paired with words like deadly, brain swelling, fatal, incurable, and in some places even the next pandemic. If this type of coverage makes you feel anxious or suspicious, you are not alone. Fear sells in 2026, but so does dismissal. So it's hard to know what's real or where to look. How do we know if a headline that's making waves is really a threat or if people just want our clicks? In today's episode, we're going to talk about what Nipah virus and Nipah virus disease actually are, how it spreads, what's happening on the ground in India right now, and most importantly, how to tell the difference between a legitimate public health concern and clickbait designed to grab your attention. So grab a cozy drink, get comfy, and let's dive into the facts. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Transmissible, a public health podcast. I am your host, Jessica Stahl, and I have spent most of my career as a contractor with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as CDC, first working with dangerous and rare pathogens in the laboratory, then traveling internationally with CDC to train scientists in rare bacteria identification. I then worked on the emergency COVID-19 response in the laboratory and testing task force, working on comms and with the media. I also have my MPH from UAB with a concentration in epidemiology and an undergrad degree in biology. And welcome to my passion project. That's where we cover every public health topic under the sun, or we plan to, from historic outbreaks, dangerous diseases, leaning more into the infectious diseases, but also touching on topics such as public health challenges during natural disasters, preeclampsia, that one was a personal episode, phototherapy for newborns, and I think we're at 52 episodes. We've just covered so many topics, and it's just been so much fun. I get a bee in my bonnet, I do like an intense deep dive, and then I jump on here and I present it to you guys. It's been so much fun. We've covered topics like vaccines and autism, measles, the MMR vaccine. Those ones have been quite popular right now, and I encourage you to listen to those if those are of interest. And what's another one? My hurricanes episode has been making some waves. That one kind of is like a seasonal topic that gets grabbed, and this has just been so fun. Oh wait, one more that is getting some traction is I have 2 episodes on if you are a public health professional and you are in this crazy job hunting world. I have 2 episodes for you where I have just these massive lists of public health job titles that I want you searching for, applying to, and also just how we can take steps in the direction of our dream career if the dream career is not right in front of us or easily accessible right now. So that's the podcast. If you are listening, you're joining a community of listeners from over 51 different countries, and I'm just so excited that you're here. This is my 4th episode with video. I usually, or like in the past, I was just doing audio, and I decided it's 2026, it's time to do some video as well. So here I am, and I've just so enjoyed doing this. I wanted to do a little housekeeping. I had some technical difficulties, and all of my last 4 episodes got pulled down off of Apple Podcasts. I did get them back up, but it really threw off my schedule, and the schedule unraveled. So I think I'm just going to stick to the original plan, which is just I get the episodes out when I get them out, and when I get, a bee in my bonnet, I deep dive until I feel like I am fully ready to present it. One of the things that I was deep diving on this topic that I will eventually be done with, but the more I learned about it, the more I realized I wasn't ready to present it, and it's very important to me that I do not present slop. So if I don't feel ready to present, I don't want any pressure to present on it. I never want to give something that I don't feel like is fully fact checked. So that's important to me. And so that's just kind of some housekeeping rules, you know what I mean? So I want to do that. Let me make sure. Yes, it is recording. Sometimes they just change the button, and sometimes it's just not recording. So yeah. So I think that's about it. We might as well just jump in. I just wanted to like touch on my Apple Podcast debacle. The issue was, let me just say, so if you're like in the podcasting world, learn from my mistakes. So when I first started this podcast, I needed like an intro jingle, right? You might notice it's not on this episode. And I'm not new to the internet. I know the internet. I know copywriting laws. And so I didn't want to use someone's work that wasn't copywritten. I also didn't want my episodes to get pulled down because if you make TikToks, you know, like you'll use a song and then like the copywriting will either change or something will happen and then it gets pulled down. Like I didn't want that to be a risk. And so I very specifically chose a jingle that was free to use, not copywritten. I intentionally did that. But I don't know what changed. I don't know if you can copyright it after it's not. I don't know what happened. But basically the jingle got flagged, but only for my past 4 episodes. So knock on wood that all of my episodes don't start coming down. I basically just went in there, cut it out, and then re-uploaded them. It's a whole thing. The people at Apple Podcasts and Spotify support were very nice, and it sounds like it might be happening to a lot of people. So I don't know if like the law changed or what, but that was a whole thing. And that's why if you noticed the episodes were gone on Apple Podcasts and then now they're back up, that I don't know if anyone notices that, but if you did, that is what happened here. So without further ado, let's just jump right in to Nipah virus. So Nipah virus, it was making waves in January. It's starting to die down a little bit. I'm a little bit on the end of this, but with the technical difficulties, it pushed this episode back a little bit. But I was curious. I was like, is it still in the news? Because I had this episode all prepped like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, sure enough, it is still getting a lot of traction. So I do think it is still a timely episode. But Nipah virus, it's a very interesting virus, and it is making crazy media headlines. I wrote down some of them, and I want to read these headlines. So these are real publications putting this out. All caps, high alert. Now remember, these are media headlines. This is not me. High alert, next pandemic virus triggers COVID-style screenings at airport as brain swelling virus leaves 2 in coma. Next one, airports launch COVID-style screenings after deadly virus outbreak. Next one, India battles deadly Nipah virus outbreak. Next one, health experts scramble to contain outbreak of deadly Nipah virus. And finally, new travel warning as brain swelling bat virus with 75% mortality could spread globally, WHO warns. So, yikes, those are kind of scary. Like I said in the intro, that might scare you if you hear it, but it also might give you a pause of like, oh, I've heard this before. It could give you a moment of like, I'm not buying it, right? So how do you know? Should I be afraid? Should I roll my eyes? Should I just be interested? Like, how do you discern when a headline comes across your table? So we're going to get into that. We're also just going to talk about Nipah virus because it is very interesting. So let's just dive on in. Okay, so what is Nipah virus? Nipah virus is a bat-borne infectious agent that causes febrile illness in humans, known as Nipah virus disease. This condition can progress to severe respiratory distress and potentially fatal encephalitis, which is brain inflammation. And it has a fatality rate that has been reported as high as 75%. That is very high. Nipah virus is also categorized as a select agent. Now, I personally have worked with select agents. I find this topic very interesting. A select agent is a biological agent or toxin that the Federal Select Agent Program, which is under HHS and USDA in America, have determined to pose a severe threat to both humans and animal health, to plant health, or to animal and plant products. So it's something that you don't really want in the hands of bad people, right? It is flagged as like a terrorism issue, right? Nipah virus is a tier 1 select agent because of its human transmissibility, high case fatality rate, high severity of illness, and severe long-term effects. Only a subset of select agents and toxins have been designated as tier 1, so Nipah is special, it is especially scary, it is especially deadly. And because these biological agents and toxins present the greatest risk of deliberate misuse, hence the terrorism part, with significant potential for mass casualties or devastating effects to the economy, critical infrastructure, public confidence, or pose a severe threat to public health and safety. Nipah is tier 1, very serious stuff. So what exactly is Nipah virus? We now know it's this bat-borne infectious disease. It is a select agent, a tier 1 select agent. But like, what is it? Let's get into the nitty-gritty science. And I will cite my sources in the body of the podcast episode. So Nipah virus is made of single-stranded negative sense RNA. Its genetic material and replicative complex composed of nucleocapsid proteins, phosphoproteins, and RNA polymerase are enclosed within a matrix protein shell and a lipid bilayer. Okay, if you're not into the science part, just hang with me, right? This is short. The lipid bilayer is covered with spike-like attachments and fusion glycoproteins that bind to ephrin B2 and ephrin B3 receptors on the host cell, enabling viral entry, right? That's how it gets in. These receptors are found on epithelial cells, endothelial cells, like those that line blood vessels, and neurons across many mammalian species, right? So that would be us, making a wide range of hosts susceptible to infection. So pretty interesting, right? And although research is ongoing, it is generally thought that Nipah virus first infects the epithelial cells of the respiratory tract. From the lungs, the virus can spread to the blood vessels and bloodstream, and from the olfactory epithelium, it can reach the brain through the olfactory nerve. Other vital organs such as the heart, kidneys, and spleen are also affected. Non-structural proteins synthesized by the virus affect host innate immune cells and impair immune responses, which contribute to disease development. In response to viral replication in the central nervous system, inflammatory cytokines are produced. Their production has been linked to the disruption of the blood-brain barrier and the development of the classic neurological symptoms that we are seeing in the media headlines. So it's not great, right? But it's also very interesting. That is the intersection of this podcast. Not great, but also very interesting. It's the bread and butter. So now let's talk about the transmissibility and the natural reservoirs, and let's get into it. Enter fruit bats. These fruit bats, also called flying foxes, are the natural reservoir hosts of Nipah virus. In infected bats, the virus is present in the feces and various body fluids, including the bat's urine, saliva, blood, and birthing fluids. Contact with these substances is the primary route of Nipah virus transmission to other species. For example, transmission can occur through the consumption of fruit that were bitten by the infected bat and thus becoming contaminated with the virus. The raw sap of date palm plants, which is widely consumed in Bangladesh, it's like a staple, and the state of West Bengal in India, as well as the naturally fermented liquor derived from the sap called tari, can also be contaminated by bats and are additional sources of viral transmission. This is a big one. There is a lot of studying around how to harvest this raw sap in a way that can kill the virus, or how to protect the palm plants from getting the virus in the first place by shielding them from bats. There's a lot of really interesting research on this that I did a big deep dive on. Although fruit bats are reservoir hosts, they do not develop symptoms of Nipah virus disease. They tolerate this virus well. Intermediate hosts for Nipah virus include pigs are a big one, and horses, which do develop these symptoms and are a source of infections for humans. So when you're looking at the history, which we're going to get into in a second, I'm jumping the gun, pigs are a big issue when it comes to Nipah virus. Other animals, including dogs, cats, hamsters, ferrets, guinea pigs, squirrel monkeys, and African green monkeys, have also shown susceptibility to infection, which makes the virus just this major public health risk because all of these animals are susceptible to it and they have a large overlap with humans. An infected person can spread the disease through their bodily fluids. The possibility of airborne transmission through virus-laden aerosols has not been confirmed. There is definitely a lot of area for research when it comes to Nipah virus. So, We know this thing is deadly. We kind of understand the virus and how it works. We understand it as best we can right now. Not all of the research has been done. It's an area, if you're a grad student, this might be a fun concentration, right? Okay, so now let's cover what is happening on the ground right now in India and why is it making all of these crazy headlines. So on January 26, 2026, this year, the National IHR Focal Point for India notified WHO of 2 laboratory-confirmed cases of Nipah virus infection in West Bengal state. Both are healthcare workers at the same private hospital, and the Nipah virus infection was also confirmed by the National Institute of Virology on January 13th. Both of these are healthcare workers. One is a female, one is a male. They're between the ages of 20 and 30, and one is on, as of when this went out, which was January 30th, one was on a mechanical ventilator. We now know that unfortunately they have passed away, and the other person has made a pretty good recovery, but still has some of the neurological symptoms. WHO went in, they assessed the risk, and they determined it to be a moderate risk at the sub-national level and a low risk at the national, the regional, and the global levels. So you have WHO itself saying at the national, regional, and global level, this is a very low risk. It's only 2 confirmed cases. They are doing contact tracing, all the above, all the good boots on the ground epi work, and it is very much under control. So that is what's going on now. Let's keep going. Let's do a little history, because remember the headlines, new virus, next pandemic. But is that the picture we see when we're looking at the history of Nipah virus? The history of a public health topic is a really important aspect to gaining discernment about whether the headline you're reading is fear-mongering, downplaying a real threat, or trying to convey a truthful message. So let's dig into it and then decide how we feel. So WHO, this is from WHO. Nipah virus was first identified in 1998 during an outbreak among pig farmers in Malaysia. In 1999, an outbreak was reported in Singapore following the importation of sick pigs from Malaysia. No new outbreaks have been reported from Malaysia or Singapore since 1999. In 2001, Nipah virus infection outbreaks were detected in India and Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, outbreaks have been reported almost every year since. So all of a sudden I'm saying, okay, if I'm reading this for the first time, okay, so every year Bangladesh has these outbreaks, and thus far this has not been, this huge pandemic, right? So just keep that in mind. In India, outbreaks are periodically reported in several parts of the country, including the latest one in 2026. That's the one that we are seeing headlines about. There have been outbreaks documented in 5 countries in South and Southeast Asia: Bangladesh, India, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Singapore. As of May 2024, there have been 754 confirmed human cases with 435 deaths. That's a case fatality rate of 58% reported in these 5 countries. So that's the average, right? Bangladesh specifically records the highest incidence with 341 cases and 241 deaths. That's a case fatality rate of 71%. So that's getting us closer to those headlines, right? Where it's like 75%, fatality rate. That's followed by Malaysia, which specifically had 283 cases and 109 deaths for a case fatality rate of 39%. We have India at 102 cases and 74 deaths. That's a case fatality rate of 73%. The Philippines are at 17 cases and 9 deaths for a CFR of 53%, and Singapore at the lowest with 11 cases and 1 death. That's a case fatality rate of only 9%. Now, enter Dr. Gurley, who serves on the World Health Organization Nipah virus task force. And she adds that the fatality rate in patients who contracted the disease from bats specifically is 90%, while human-to-human transmission carries a fatality rate of between 40 and 50%. Dr. Gurley also told Unilad that despite the concerns, the virus is still very unlikely to cause a global pandemic. And quote, "If this is like past Nipah virus outbreaks, then no, the virus just isn't very transmissible," she said. Since Nipah was first identified in 1998, data shows that on average, each infected person passes the virus to just 0.3 other people, Dr. Gurley added. In most cases, patients do not infect anyone else at all. So as we can see from these numbers, this just isn't the scary spreader that the headlines make it seem to be. And how do we know this? We know this because we are able to learn about the virus itself. We are able to be the recipient of data. There have been studies on this, so we know it doesn't spread to that many people. Even when someone does get it, the people around them are just not, all getting Nipah virus from them, right? Because it's been going on for almost 30 years, they're saying every year in Bangladesh, there's this little outbreak. People know about it. They know how to treat it. Some of these headlines are factual and saying there are, quarantine measures. There are, things are changing in the airports, but it's because they know this virus and they know that, yes, it's very deadly, but also they know how to contain it, right? So we can look at the history, we can look at the science, and then we can also look at what the experts are saying. Dr. Gurley, she's on the WHO Nipah virus task force. She's saying, unless this thing changes, it is most likely not going to be the next pandemic. That's really insightful. And that also backs up what we already kind of thought by looking at the history and looking at the science. So right now I have three things: the history, the science, and an expert on, one of the main task force saying, I don't think this is something that, I'm sitting here in Colorado in the US. I don't think this is something that needs to even pique my anxiety. It can be interesting. I can, think it's interesting and do a podcast about it, but it's not something to get scared about. Despite, if you search it on TikTok, if you search it on Twitter, you're just going to see crazy content. But that's because crazy sells, right? In this day and age, crazy sells. So I didn't do the symptoms. Let's just cover the symptoms. So if you are one of those unlucky individuals who gets it, what does this virus look like in symptom form in a patient? So people who get Nipah virus may be asymptomatic, or they may present with non-specific symptoms like fever, headache, body aches, nausea, vomiting, and sore throat. Some patients may experience extreme breathing difficulties. Patients may also report dizziness, confusion. These could be some of the signs of encephalitis. Symptoms usually appear within 4 to 14 days of infection. In severe cases, encephalitis and seizures are followed by a coma within 24 to 48 hours. And although some patients recover, death occurs, like we were already talking about, in 40 to 75% of cases. About 20% of patients who recover from acute encephalitis report residual neurological symptoms, including fatigue, seizures, and changes in behavior. Relapse has also been reported in some patients, and encephalitis may actually develop later. The nonspecific nature of Nipah virus disease makes it really difficult to diagnose, especially, if it's in this rural village and they don't have the diagnostic tools that, a bigger city might have. Physicians rely on clinical features during the acute phase of the disease, as well as the detection of viral RNA in bodily fluids. But you need to have the capacity of a hospital and, electricity to conduct some of those tests. And in some of these places where the outbreaks happen, that just is not always the case. In the absence of approved medicine or vaccines, the treatment of Nipah virus infection is limited to providing supportive care for respiratory and neurological complications. Several experimental therapies, including monoclonal antibodies and antivirals such as remdesivir, have been used in some cases. Newer classes of drugs such as fusion inhibitory peptides are being developed for the treatment of Nipah virus disease. To reduce the risk of Nipah virus infection, CDC recommends regular hand washing with soap and water, avoiding contact with bats, their roosts, and bat-contaminated objects, including the food and the drinks, and avoiding contact with Nipah-infected people or animals such as the pigs and their body fluids. So kind of typical advice that we see with a lot of infectious diseases, and it's just, wash your hands, stay away from contaminated things and people, and that's about it. This is a shorter episode because there's not like tons to know about Nipah virus. There, like I said earlier, there's definitely a vacuum of information and a lot of room for research. But as of right now, I disagree with the headlines. I disagree with the TikToks and everything saying, this is the next big one. And I hope I feel like this was more of like an off the cuff episode, but I hope I shared kind of how I look at headlines. And it's, I look at the science, I look at the history, I'm forming my own opinions. And then I'm looking at, what do people who really intimately know this virus, in this case, or whatever we're talking about, what are they saying also? Is that lining up with, the research that I did, the places, I'm looking at official sources, CDC, WHO, hospitals, a lot of good hospital systems have great pages on specific diseases, but I'm also digging into the actual papers, the primary source. I wish I could teach it. I wish that there was a class in high school that taught people how to read studies so people could go to the primary source. This is the study that looked at it. These are the methods. This, how to break down, maybe I should do an episode on that, how to break down just a primary source. And when all of those are lining up with the same conclusion, like in this case, very deadly disease, I definitely would not want to get it. I definitely feel for the people who have it right now in this very small outbreak, but I do disagree with the clickbaity next pandemic headlines. You know what I mean? So I think we can be rational. We can say, multiple things can be true at one time. Something can be scary. It can be very deadly. It can be very serious for the people who are in the splash zone, so to speak. But that doesn't necessarily mean COVID era lockdowns, right? So, but that's what they want from the clicks. So those are my thoughts. This was a little bit less of a formal episode, but yeah, those are my thoughts. Thank you for listening. And like I said, I think I'm going to just stick to my loose schedule and not my strict schedule. I was doing every first Monday and every third Monday, but I think in order, there's a lot of different ways I could take this podcast, and it is, this is my passion project. I want it to stay my passion project where I deep dive and then I jump on here and share. I don't want it to feel like, I got to get something out. Let me get in there and throw something together. I want it to really be something that I was excited about, and I'm excited to jump on here and just word vomit all of my thoughts, right? So I think in order to keep that, I will keep my loose schedule of just trying to get a couple episodes out per month, but not the 6 a.m. Monday morning. We tried. I don't think it's for me. Not right now. Not this life season. I like I said, this is my passion project, and I have 2 very little kids at home. So maybe in a different life season, which I plan to keep doing this. So it needs to be sustainable, and I just want to make sure it stays fun and not I got to get something out. I don't want that pressure. I want it to be I can't wait to record this. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for listening. And if you have any comments or concern, if I got something right, if I got something wrong, email me at transmissiblepodcast@gmail.com. I'm also I would say I'm on TikTok the most. I technically have a Twitter account, but I'm on TikTok the most. So message me on there, leave a comment. A couple of my videos started popping off, and I started getting crazy comments. So that's how you know we're reaching on the viewership. But yeah, I appreciate all the supportive message, and this is just a very fun community and a very curious. I love just the curious nature of this community. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.